Okay, welcome back. This time we're going to begin something I'm going to be doing more of in the second semester, and that's this so-called Blackboard sheets. This is basically just to drill you on verbal forms, okay? You know, how to quickly handle the proliferation of verb forms you're going to be getting, okay? The whole point of this exercise is to help you to build fluency. Oops, I didn't want to do that. To build fluency with Biblical Greek, and that in no small part involves getting good with verbal forms, okay? So what I would suggest you do with all of these, this one and all the other ones you're going to be getting, you can use these however you want, but it's going to be best if this is more of a hands-on exercise, okay? In other words, I would suggest you do these yourself and then watch what I do and then maybe check your work against mine, okay? That's one way to go about it. Or alternatively, watch what I do, and then when it's not, you know, immediately fresh in your mind, then you know, take a crack at it yourself, okay? But in other words, don't simply sit back and watch me do this. You're not going to get nearly as much from it as if you try it yourself. Okay, the first bunch of these are going to be fairly straightforward. Let's move the cursor up here. The third plural present, and these are all forms of luo, by the way, okay? And later blackboards will do forms of any verb, but let's just start with our paradigm verb first. Okay, so the third plural present active indicative, what would that be? Well, it's luosine, right? Oops. Okay, let's put our accent in here. Okay, how do I get that? Well, simply just by remembering the paradigm, right? And this is really where your knowledge of paradigms is going to come in. Okay, luo, luase, lue, luomen, luate, luusine. Okay, present active indicative. Okay, second plural present active indicative of luo. What would that be? Well, remember, the second plural always has that eta ending, right? Okay, so it's simply luate. Luate. All right. Now we look at a tense other than the present. In this case, a future. What's the mark of the future? Well, it's the second principal part, so it's always got that sigma. Okay, so we might even start out just by writing luso here, but we wanted a second singular, so it's going to be luces. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not a very good typist in Greek or English. Okay. Luces. Okay, luso, luces, luce, lucimen, lucite, lususine. Okay. All right, the first plural, future, active, indicative. Again, we start out maybe with luso. Okay, and then realize, aha, we want first plural, so it's lucimen. Lucimen. All right. Hopefully these are fairly easy for you. I mean, I want to start out easy with this before we really deal with many more permutations that we're likely to see. Okay, let's take this one. The third plural imperfect active indicative of luo. The third plural imperfect active indicative of luo. What would that be? Well, how do we form the imperfect? Okay, we start out with the first principal part and do what to it? Remember, there's two things we do to it. We add the augment, okay, and then we put a secondary ending on it. Okay. Now, in this case, the secondary ending is exactly the one we wanted because this is the third plural. It also could have been what? That form could have been the first singular, right? Eluon. And I should accent it here, sorry. Eluon. Okay, so eluon, elus, elue, or eluen. Okay, eluomen, eluate, eluon. Okay, so you have augment, secondary ending. That's the way to make it imperfect. Okay, all right, rolling on along here. The first singular aorist active indicative. The first singular aorist active indicative. But what's the aorist again? The third principal part, which is simply what? Elusa. Elusa. Okay, and that happens to be the first singular form as well. Okay, elusa, elusas, elusen, elusimen, elusite, eluson. Okay? So that's a very common one, as the aorist is the most common tense, as we've discussed. Okay, So now back to the present tense again, but now we're going to look at a passive indicative. Okay, a first plural passive indicative. Well, what makes it passive? Well, you basically just take your generic first principal part here, luo, and instead of putting active endings on, you put the middle passive endings on. Okay, so what are the middle passive? Well, for the first principal part, it's luomai. For the first singular, it's luomai. Okay, then it's what? For the second one, it's lue. Okay, then what? Okay, luatai. Okay, right? And then what? For the first plural, it's going to be luamatha. Okay, and that's the one we want. Okay, luamatha, then luisthe, then luontai. Okay? You've got to remember those endings. Okay, now, how about this one? The second plural future middle. The second plural future middle. Well, how do we make any future for present or middle? For active or middle, we build it off the second principal part, right? Which is this, luso. Okay, so to make it middle, we do what? We put on the middle endings, okay, which happen to be the same endings as the present middle passive endings, okay? Now, so let's take a look here. So the second plural future middle, okay, well, what would it be if it were first singular? Okay, it would be lusamai, right? Okay, then it would be luce for the second one. Okay, second singular. Okay, then it would be what? Lucetai for the third one. Okay, then what? Lusamatha, which is a lot like luamatha, except it has a sigma there. It's sort of like that one. Okay, and then what? Second plural would be what? Remember? Okay, luamatha, lusamatha, lucista. Okay, lucista, which is like this. Okay, put our accent in here, and we're good to go. Okay? Now, remember, this form by itself here, going back to this number 7, that could have also been what? That could have also been the first plural present middle indicative as well, couldn't it have? Okay? But this one is what? Could that have been the future passive indicative? No. The future passive is something different. We'll see those later. That's a distinctive form. Okay? Future middles, future passives are different. However, present passives, present middles are ambiguous, at least in terms of the form. Okay? All right. Moving on along, the third plural aorist active indicative. Okay, third plural aorist active indicative. I probably should have made it aorist. Well, I'll do the next one here. So, okay, so the aorist active indicative is what? That's simply the third principal part. So we'll start out with elusa, like that. Okay, and to make it third plural, we would do what? Put the third plural ending on. Okay, elusa, elusas, elusa, elusamin, elusate, elusan. There we go. Put the correct accent in there. We're golden. Okay, now, the third plural aorist middle indicative. The third plural aorist middle indicative. What would that be? The third plural aorist middle. Well, again, let's start out with our generic third principal part there. Okay, and what are we going to do now? Instead of having the active endings, we're going to slap the middle endings on. Okay, and so the middle endings were what? They were elusa. Let's change this accent here. Take it off here. So elusamen would be the first singular. Then what? Then eluso for the second singular aorist middle. Then what? Elusata, okay, for the third singular aorist middle. Then what? Elusamatha, okay, for the first plural. Okay, then what? Elusasta, okay, for the second plural. Then the third plural would finally be what? Elusanta. Okay, elusanta. So we'll put the accent in here, and there we go. Okay? All right. Very good. let's take a break, and then we will come back and do the parsing of the actual existing Greek forms. Okay, let's take a look at these here. These hopefully should be pretty straightforward to you as well. Okay, lumen, lumen. Okay, we see here it should be visible that you're just dealing with lu here with no sigma, no augment, nothing like that. And so really it has to be present tense. So it looks to me like it's going to be what? First plural. Oops, I need to put this back in Greek here. English, I mean. First plural, present, active, indicative. Okay? All right, lusomen, lusomen. What's the difference between luomen and lusomen? Well, that sigma tells you what? When you just have a sigma, nothing else, that means future. Okay, so now you're dealing with what? Now you're looking at first, plural, future, active, indicative. Okay? How do you know that? Just by knowing your principal parts well. Okay? All right. Move on to number 13. Elumen. Elumen. Oh, okay. Well, you've got an augment here at no sigma. Okay. If you did have a sigma, you'd be thinking aorist, but since there's an augment with no sigma, that should tip off in our mind. We're thinking more like imperfect. Okay. So again, first plural, imperfect, active, indicative. Okay, and now we move on along. Elusomen, elusomen. Okay, well here's the classic sign of an aorist. In fact, that should be an ah. Sorry about that. Okay, so you have three things you're looking for here: an epsilon here, a sigma, and an alpha. Okay, classic sign of an aorist. Okay, of just a regular verb. So again, first, all right, first, plural, aorist, active, indicative. Okay? All right, good. Number 15. Okay, lucitai, lucitai. Well, how do we break this one down? Well, again, what are we looking for here? I notice a sigma here, and that should be a giveaway for something. Okay, sigma, no augment. Okay, and yet I see what? I see a middle passive ending there. Okay, so again, this could only be one thing. The sigma tells me it's future. Okay, but the etai ending. So remember, mysi tai, methasi ontai. Okay, so you're looking at what? Third singular future. Is it going to be active or middle? Well, if it were active, it would be what? It would be luce. Okay, but lucitai makes it a middle. Could it be passive? No, it couldn't be. Okay, that would be a different form altogether. This is strictly middle. So third singular, future, middle, and it is indicative. All these are going to be indicative for a while. We won't see anything non-indicative until we get to the second semester. Okay. All right, let's move on here. Elucita, elucita. Okay, that's a good one. Here again, epsilon, sigma, alpha. You should right away think aorist. Okay. We'll just even write aorist here, even though we don't know what the rest is going to be. Okay, so elucita. What about the ending? Okay, what about that ending? Well, remember, aorist is a secondary tense and therefore uses secondary endings. Okay, in both the active and the middle form. Okay, so remember, men, so, to, metha, so, and to. Okay, so that's what we have here. So it's a third singular. Okay, aorist, middle, indicative. Okay, how do we know it's middle? Because of the middle ending there. Okay, what if it were active? What would it be? If it were active, it would be what? Elusen. Okay, then we'd have to make it active. Okay? But here, since it's middle, you make it middle. Okay? Okay, alluamine. Alluamine. Okay, this one, you've got an augment, okay, and no sigma. Okay, for a verb that would take a sigma if it were in the aorist. Okay, so therefore, this can only be one thing, and that's going to be an imperfect. But what kind of imperfect? Well, remember the endings? Main, so, to, methisa, unto. Okay, well, we saw the to here, and this one was a sign of third singular. So the main, if you know your endings well, is going to be the first singular. Imperfect, okay, middle, okay, could it be anything else? The answer is yes. Okay, that form, strictly speaking, could also be passive too, and we don't know which one it is because we don't have a context. All we have is the form. Okay, so it's a first singular imperfect, middle, or passive indicative. Either one. Okay. All right, moving on here. Okay, alluamine and elusamin, what's the difference here? That sigma alpha there is a dead giveaway for one thing, and anytime you see the sigma alpha, that should scream aorist. Okay, and indeed that's what we have here. Okay, especially with that augment there. That's another sign. Okay, so we now have what? A first singular aorist middle indicative. Okay, could it be passive? No. That's strictly middle for the aorist. Okay, it's only so far we've seen the present and the imperfect that have a ambiguous middle or passive form. Okay, for the future and for the aorist, that they're two different forms. Okay, so there's no way of confusing them. Okay. All right, luso. Okay, that one should be pretty easy. That's simply your second principal part. Luo, luso, elusa, leluka, lelumai, eluthane. So it has to be what? Simply this. First singular. Future. Active. Indicative. Okay. Very good. Okay, what about eluso? That one's a little bit tricky. Okay, eluso. That looks sort of like luso, but it's got that epsilon there, so that rules out future. Future would never have that epsilon augment. Okay, when do you see that so ending? Well, that sort of looks like it could be future, but again, we ruled out future, and that sigma rules out anything in the present or the imperfect. Okay, so we should know right away it's going to be some kind of an aorist. Okay, but what kind? Well, if you remember, your active forms, what? What was the sign of the aorist active forms? They all had what? They all had an alpha, like this one. Okay, this doesn't have an alpha, though. Okay, so it can't be active, but, well, what else could it be? It could be middle. Okay, remember what we saw with the middles? Men, so, to, methisa, unto. Okay, in this case, this is going to be a middle form. So it's second singular aorist middle indicative. Okay, second singular aorist middle. Now, it's not to be confused with this one, elusa. Why? Because you have that alpha here, the sigma alpha. It's still an aorist, but now it's what? That's simply your third principal part. So this is going to be a first singular aorist active indicative. Active indicative. All right. Should be no way of confusing those two forms. Okay. The sigma alpha with the epsilon augment is a dead giveaway that you're dealing with some kind of an aorist active. Okay. Or an aorist indicative, I mean. Now, here we are. There's another one here. Elusanta. Well, sigma alpha, pretty good. Epsilon, yeah, I like that. Some kind of an aorist for sure. Okay, but what kind? Any kind of active? Well, how would the active go? The active would look like this. It would be elusa, elusas. Okay, oops. Elusan, elusamen, elusate, elusan. Okay, none of those what we have here. But what about the middles? We have elusamen, elusata. Okay, elusamatha, elusaste, elusanta, elusanta. Okay, so this is going to be a third plural. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Third plural, aorist, middle, indicative. Okay? Aorist, middle, indicative. Okay, so what else here? We've got a few more here. Let's scroll them down so we can see them. Okay, lusamatha, lusamatha. Okay, well, again, let's just eliminate the possibilities here. We've got a sigma. Okay, so that rules out what? That rules out present and imperfect. It could either be what? Well, an aorist would have a sigma and so would a future, but an aorist would have what? In the indicative, an aorist would have an augment here, and there's no augment here, so it has to be some kind of a future. Okay, but what flavor of future is it? Well, the metha should tip us off that this is a middle or passive ending, so I think it's not going to be active. I think it's going to be middle. So I'm thinking here first, not singular, plural, future, middle, indicative. Okay. All right. Number 24. What would this one be? Elusamatha. Elusamatha. Okay. Sigma alpha, augment. Okay. It's for sure some kind of an aorist. Okay. Only an aorist would do that. Okay. But we notice here a middle or passive ending. Okay. This rules out any kind of an active form, and the metha is the standard first plural middle passive ending. Okay. In this case here, for an aorist, though, it's strictly a middle form. Why? Because the passive is a distinctive form. Okay, just like with the future. Both of these are strictly, both these two are strictly middle. Okay? They can't be passive. Okay? All right. Coming on along here, lucista. Lucista. Okay, well, we've got a sigma and no augment and no alpha. I think future. Okay, that's really all that could be. Okay, that estha there also is a second plural ending. So second plural, future, middle, indicative. Okay, very good. One more. Elusista. Elusista, which sort of looks like lucista, but kind of doesn't, because you got the sigma alpha, augment. What is that? That screams aorist. Okay, so it's an aorist, but what? It's still a second plural, but now it's an aorist middle indicative. Second plural aorist middle indicative. Okay. All right, good. Hopefully those are fairly doable for you there. Okay, that's all review and just kind of basically familiarizing yourself with your principal parts and your paradigms. Okay, so very good. Okay, let's break, and I will see you in the homework assignments.